Inflation, depression, K-shaped economy, imminent collapse. What is going to happen in the future? I don't know personally, but I found this video that I thought it would be interesting to react to. It's called "They're Betting on an Economic Collapse" by Damian Cassidy. So we're going to sit down, watch it, kind of talk about it, and see where our future is headed, at least according to our friend here.
According to the World Inequality Report, the top 0.001% now control 3 times more wealth than the entire bottom half of humanity, with billionaire net worth rising by 81% in the last 5 years. And despite the stock market having just reached an all-time high, homelessness is officially worse than during the Great Recession, with over half of Americans struggling to afford food. Raising the question, when did an economic collapse become more profitable than investing in our future? While the economy is supposed to be defined by the quality of the job market, the affordability of housing, and the cost of living for its citizens, the unfortunate reality is that when just 10% of
If you're a regular person with barely any assets right now, it's the worst time. If you are just working a job and getting a paycheck, it's the worst time, because your paycheck is worth less and less every week, every other week that you get it, every month that you get it, and everything's becoming more and more expensive with no signs of coming down at all. It's really a bad time.
Americans make up over 50% of consumer spending, with the bottom half barely controlling 1% of all corporate equities and mutual fund shares. It instead reflects the incentives of those who control it, leaving the price of the Dow to mask decades of underlying decay.
The Dow. Oh, okay, all right. We're not gonna get distracted by that. It's a snowball effect, isn't it? It's when you let the rich get richer over time. They'll just accumulate more wealth exponentially because of how the interest in the stock market works. Is if it's going up and up year over year, and you are 95% invested in there, 99% of your wealth is tied into the stock market and all these different assets, and they're all going up. You just use your newfound wealth to just get more assets. That makes perfect sense to me. It feels very rigged, but that's just the way they set up the system. And it's basically a snowball that, as it's rolling downhill, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But unfortunately, one of the side effects of the snowball getting bigger and bigger and bigger is it's going to destroy everything in its path. And a lot of our infrastructure and a lot of the programs and necessities that people were relying on were being funded by taxes that are no longer there, by money that's no longer there. And you can have your opinion about government handouts and everything, but how can a government govern if the richest people don't pay their fair share and they do whatever they can to avoid paying any sort of fair share? How can you keep a system running, right? And I think that's where we're headed. If I had to guess and say, okay, where's the future going to be? We're not going to be voting or anything anymore. We're just going to be living in the corporate states of America, where each corporation just owns a different state or different part of the country, and they just run their operations from there. Why would you need a government if everything's provided to you by the corporations, and you cut every sort of spending, and you get rid of all government programs and everything? Why would you need a government then, right? I'm just speculating at this point, but it's interesting to think about where the future is headed, because then your vote wouldn't matter anymore, and it's only about the wealth and the assets that you own, and who owns the most wealth and assets gets to say how the society gets run from then on. So,
only for the inevitable fallout to be socialized through another immense bailout, a framework that has turned the economy into a glorified casino following the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. As a result of the Great Recession, Congress injected hundreds of billions of dollars through the Troubled Asset Relief Program into institutions deemed too big to fail, while the Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet from roughly $900 billion before the crisis to about $4.5 trillion by late 2014, stabilizing financial markets and effectively signaling that the government will always step in to remove downside risk for large institutions. corporations, allowing them to benefit from rising asset prices during expansion while relying on public intervention to absorb losses during periods of collapse. As the economy began to recover on paper, with the stock market reaching
The snowball effect that I was talking about, it works both ways though. So if these large institutions collapse, in turn, they're gonna cause damages to your day-to-day life. And people that were employed, people that were using their services no longer can. People that were relying on those services no longer can. So you have the other side of it where, okay, let's have all these institutions fail and go broke and kind of have them call it quits. You know, oh, we're fucked, we're bankrupt, we can't do business anymore. Every other institution that was depending on that institution is also gonna be in heaps of trouble, right? So I think that was the justification for them to not let them collapse, and I definitely understand that. But now you're in a situation where, as our friend just mentioned, you're basically signaling to anybody that has enough assets and is running these institutions that, oh, don't worry about it. We got you, dude. We got you. It's chill. No worries.
all-time highs in under 5 years, most Americans experienced a wealthless recovery, as median household net worth took nearly a decade to return to pre-recession levels. National home prices, the primary source of middle-class wealth, took even longer at roughly 11 years, but this was most evident in the employment-to-population ratio, which did not regain its November 2007 peak of 62.9% until 2019, just months before the global pandemic, and has since declined again following recent tech layoffs, demonstrating why so many Americans feel and are worse off economically, despite asset prices reaching all-time.
Let me know how you guys feel. I don't want to assume for everybody else, and I know people's situations are different, and if you own any sort of hard asset like a house or something, you are definitely way well off than somebody who's renting and paying off their debts and their only income is their job, right? But let me know how you guys feel. Do you feel the squeeze? Do you think we're economically worse off? I do see it. The prices of everything going up is insane, and sometimes I do wonder is how expensive the regular groceries are gonna get. Where a trip every weekend, your trip to the grocery store is gonna cost $500 to $700 at some point for the same amount of stuff that you would get for $100, for $150, and it just keeps going up and up and up. So I do see it. The gas prices, I do see it, and all that. But if you're working in a sector that is not affected by AI yet, and you're not seeing those mass layoffs that we were talking about a few videos ago, where it was just insane. Like 100,000 people got laid off between last year and this year. And it's just accumulating, it's moving forward. And that's only tech. And imagine if the AI gets more developed where it can replace most white collar jobs and middle management. That'll be another mass wave of unemployment coming. So things are just gonna get worse and worse for regular people. What do you guys think? Do you think we're gonna be worse off, better off? What do you think is gonna happen in the future?
Highs, specifically in regards to younger Americans. For millennials, the generation that entered adulthood during the fallout, wealth accumulation remains 30% lower than prior generations, while also carrying higher levels of debt. When you combine millennials, the largest living generation, with Gen Z, they account for roughly 10.7% of total wealth, while baby boomers, who disproportionately benefited from rising asset prices, control roughly 51%. Where research from Scott Fulford, a senior economist at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, suggests the economy actually never recovered from 2008, estimating the crisis created a permanent downward shift in the GDP per person trendline, resulting in roughly $28 trillion in cumulative lost output, proving that what followed the crisis was a complete restructuring of the economy.
That's a huge number. Oh my God. Imagine if we actually recovered and that 28 trillion was in circulation and it actually got to the hands of the people. How better off everybody would be, right? If the wages kept up, people didn't need to take on that much debt, and they were able to buy more assets, and everything was slightly more affordable. Oh man, we would definitely not be in the situation that we are in, dude. Oh my God, that's a crazy number.
Economy itself, where rising child poverty, mass homelessness, and historic underemployment become secondary to a system that prioritizes maximizing shareholder returns. The shift towards an economy where the masses are becoming economically irrelevant, except when needed for a bailout, is most clearly seen with the AI bubble. A September 2025 analysis from Deutsche Bank warned that without AI-related investment, the US economy would already be in a technical recession, marking for the first time in American history that consumer spending is not the primary driver of GDP growth. And while these conditions would typically trigger immediate action to stabilize a weakening economy, when the system is no longer structured around the financial stability of the population, the priority becomes maintaining market performance at all-time highs. In 2024, roughly 53% of all gains in the S&P 500 were driven by just 7 companies. In 2000,
I think it's a part of that, call me a conspiracy theorist. It's a part of the decoupling from society that I think billionaires are trying to do, is where they really are. They want to have their own separate economy where it's year over year, you're accumulating more and more and more. And you have to pay less and less and less to people, right? With AI, you basically can run companies by yourself. That's kind of the idea, right? If the AI gets as good as it could possibly be, you would just need a CEO. That's it. Or you would just need the idea and then you just let AI run everything, right? And then you end up decoupling yourself from real life and from society and day-to-day people, from the average person. You basically end up having your own reality and having your own version of Earth where everything's perfect and you can afford everything and it's just amazing for you, right? But then at what cost? At the cost of everybody else suffering and being held down and not getting any fair wages, or not being able to purchase any assets, or kind of get stuck in this loop of taking on more debt and then paying it off, taking on debt and paying it off, because that's all they can afford. So that's kind of where I see it going, where, you know, they already buying islands, they already kind of separating themselves. And we were talking about attack on Sam Altman's house. He has even more incentive to live away from any sort of civilization, right? And it's just, he has more incentive to just make sure that he has the ability to just be completely cut off while also maintaining control of the assets and everything that he has. So that's where I see things going, where the top 0.001% are just decoupled and they just have their own reality that they're living in.
25, they accounted for roughly 50% of total gains, with Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, and Tesla now making up more than 1/3 of the entire index, marking the most concentrated share in US market history. At the same time, both Anthropic and OpenAI have reached a combined valuation of nearly $2 trillion, or the same as Walmart and JP Morgan combined, without either company being profitable. This AI hype cycle has even seen a failed shoe company have their stock rise by over 582% on a single day closing basis, with intraday peaks reaching as high.
New bird AI or something. I don't know. All birds turn into new birds or something. Oh man. The speculation is crazy though. How long are you able to speculate on Anthropic and OpenAI to be able to deliver? Like, when is the limit? When is enough? When can you say enough is enough? Like, we can't invest any. We're out of money. Everybody invested as much they had into OpenAI and Anthropic. Like, how can we make more money to put in these companies that still don't give us as many returns as possible, as much returns as needed to be able to sustain their valuation? We were talking about Anthropic hitting 30 billion annual revenue. And if things go well, they might hit 100 billion by the end of the year. But that's if things go well. Whose data centers are not being built. For now, scalability is fine. And the idea is, if you scale the AI and give it as much compute as possible, they just get better and better. But how long is that going to last? Are you going to hit a ceiling with that? Just like how we hit the ceiling with CPUs and GPUs, where the jump from generation to generation is getting smaller and smaller. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very, very weird future we're headed in.
As roughly 876%, after simply changing its name from Allbirds to New Bird AI, overlooking the fact that we simply do not have the energy and water infrastructure required to sustain this level of computing demand. With nearly
yeah, that's another thing. We were talking about the data centers just being built up everywhere. Who's gonna pay for the sustainability of them? Us. If you're already paying a power bill, if you're personally paying a power bill, and you're involved in keeping the lights on at your house, you're also going to be the one paying for these data centers to stay on, because the power providers, the energy providers, are just going to increase the cost and just have you also pay for the same electricity they give in the data centers. They're not going to separate it and say, okay, well, data centers pay this amount, but regular people pay that amount. No, they're going to make sure everybody pays the premium that they charge the data centers, because the demand is there and everybody needs electricity.
50% of planned data centers already be installed or canceled, effectively meaning that while artificial intelligence may eventually deliver on meaningful productivity gains, the reality is that this post-2008 economy is essentially being propped up on the hopes of rampant large-scale labor displacement. To test whether artificial intelligence can actually automate human labor at scale, researchers from the Center for AI Safety and Scale AI released the Remote Labor Index, a benchmark designed to measure how effectively today's AI agents can perform real-world work to a professionally acceptable standard. In the test, state-of-the-art models built by companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google were tasked with completing the same work currently performed by paid human workers under identical expectations of quality, accuracy, and consistency. The results show that even the best performing model achieves an automation rate of just 4.17%, with Oxford research suggesting that many so-called AI layoffs are less about actual automation and more about signaling the illusion of technological progress to investors, creating the appearance of innovation while masking broader economic weakness.
Oh, of course. They can't afford to pay those people, and they're laying them off with AI being the excuse. They are already training robots and artificial intelligence to do day-to-day tasks. I don't know if it was Optimus or one of these humanoid robotics companies. They were paying people to film themselves folding clothes, doing laundry, and doing the basic day-to-day households to train their humanoid robots. So I feel like it's only a matter of time. Right now, what he's saying is very true. AI can only do like 5% of 100% of the work, but how long is that going to be true for? And if the AI companies are right and scalability is the only obstacle, and they just scale to AGI, they solve that problem right there. And all they would need is to destroy the land we're living in and just build data centers on every inch possible, just for them to be able to compute. But then they would have done it. You know, they would actually get to do what the other companies are claiming that they're doing, which is automating their work and laying off people.
So when there is essentially no concern for the economic reality that millions of Americans face, while hundreds of billions of dollars continues to pour into this AI hype cycle, the economic incentives begin to mirror 2008 all over again, as there is far more money to be made maintaining the illusion of growth than delivering real economic value, with the understanding that when the system is pushed beyond its limits once again, the losses will be socialized while capital can consolidate, assets can be acquired at lower valuations, and market power can expand even further out of reach. And while we find ourselves in a position where we either face mass unemployment or the largest bailout in American history, this concentration of power into the hands of a select few has enabled systems like surveillance pricing to offset declining consumer purchasing power. A study from the FTC revealed that intermediaries and major retailers are actively using personal data, including browsing behavior, location data, and inferred traits like new parent status to set individualized prices for the same products. The same pattern extends into essential purchases, where Instacart shoppers ordering identical groceries from the same store at the same time were shown different prices on nearly 75% of products, with some items costing as much as 23% more depending on the customer, ultimately costing a typical family an extra $1,200.
It's all for the goal of optimization and getting as much money from the consumer as possible. And this is just the one thing they can do. There's so many other ways they can squeeze the regular person to get money. They monetize the air we breathe, monetize the sidewalks we walk on. Just ridiculous, man. Just ridiculous. When is it gonna stop? At what point we're gonna hit a wall where we can't even monetize anything anymore? It's because we monetized everything, and everything's for sale, and you got a price tag on it. I mean, people have had this feeling for a long time where you can't go out and exist, and you can't go out without being squeezed, without being not forced to pay, but without feeling like you have to pay to be able to live. And I'm talking about pay like the rising prices, right? The necessities are the necessities. Like that's basically what should cover. You work your job, you provide value, and in turn, you get a paycheck that will cover the necessities. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about everything else that you want to do. You just have to live your life so diligently, and you have to plan it out so precisely so that you wouldn't need to spend too much money, so that you don't get squeezed with Instacart and all that, right? For now, it's on your app, and you can just circumvent that by not using the app. At what point you would need the app to shop at the grocery store? You can't not have the app and then shop there. They're not gonna let you check out, and the prices of everything will be shown to you on the app, so that everybody gets their own personalized prices. So that it doesn't even matter if you get Instacart or get the regular cart, they still get to the same place where it's personalized pricing. And if the more desperate you are, the more you like something, they can squeeze harder for it. If it's your favorite chocolate, it's your favorite item of food item, it's as expensive as you're willing to pay for it.
Or more per year, reinforcing a system where economic relevance is no longer tied to participation in the economy, but to the extraction of personal data. Which is why I personally combat this erosion of privacy using NordVPN. NordVPN operates thousands of ultra-fast VPN servers.
I got Nord too. Good service. A very good service. Very easy to use. Affordable. I think I paid $86 for 2 years. It was very, very good. It's very, very good price.
Across 200 plus locations and voice cloning. NordVPN has been named independent anti-phishing certification, threat detection on the pursuit of a better tomorrow. NordVPN's mission is rooted in making the internet better than it is today, free from online threats, the internet safer, and for partnering with the channel. Alongside the rise of surveillance capitalism effectively bypassing the foundational principles of American society, you would assume that AI alone represents the most immediate and disruptive development within the economy. However, recent cases of insider trading point to an even more pressing concern, as geopolitical events are now producing life or death consequences that are increasingly being monetized within the system. Since the start of the Iran war, at least 4 major instances of highly suspicious trading in oil futures are now being investigated by the CFTC for potential insider trading. On March 23rd, roughly $580 million was bet on falling oil prices just 16 minutes before a delay in strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure was announced. On April 7th, nearly $950 million was placed on declining prices hours before a 2-week ceasefire announcement. On April 17th, traders executed a $760 million bet on lower oil prices approximately 20 minutes before Iran's foreign minister announced that the Strait of Hormuz would be open to commercial vessels. And on April 22nd, another $430 million bet was placed just 15 minutes before the announcement of an extension of the ceasefire.
What do you guys think? Is this right? I genuinely do want to hear people that are okay with this, and they just chalk it up to being a savvy investor. And just being on top of it, you know? Oh yeah, if you were in that situation, you would do this too. You would take advantage of all the insider information that you know, and it's just so blatant and it's so brazen. Like, and it's only that way because they know it's never gonna get prosecuted, and if it even gets prosecuted, it's gonna get dropped or something, or it's never gonna go anywhere. You just see these numbers, and it's just so huge. And these people are just getting. They already have the money. They're just getting richer and richer and richer by deliberately gaming everything and making sure they make the right moves at the right time. You either would want to. I feel like it's only 2 feelings you can have. You either infuriated and you would want to stop it, or you're infuriated and you would want to also have the insider knowledge, right? Like, how can you look at this and be like, yeah, that's fine. This is totally okay.
Where these trades not only suggest insider corruption, but show the immense profit incentive of increased geopolitical instability. And to prove how profit is a true incentive, listen to how the potential destruction of an entire civilization is reduced to a question of market positioning.
This deadline that President Trump has set, 8 p.m., has threatened to destroy a civilization. How does an investor process that? Is it a bigger upside risk or downside risk?
Highlighting that
Hilarious. I'm gonna be honest. She's just doing her job, bro. Leave her alone. She was just trying to relate it to investing as much as possible. It's not her fault the president said that he's gonna destroy a whole civilization. She just took it and ran with it. Respect to her. Respect to her for actually trying. She gave it a good try. It was very, very bad. And like and very tone deaf. But at the same time, hey, what are you gonna do? You're the host. You gotta ask these questions. Might as well.
The real concern is not the loss of human life, a worsening global energy crisis, the risk of mass famine, or the reality that 63% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck struggle just to put gas in their car, but rather how a select few can profit from this conflict while the burden falls on the broader public. And when we account for the fact that the only difference between the stock market's all-time high on February 19th and the one we have just reached is that the Strait of Hormuz, where roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes, is now closed, it becomes clear that there is not an ounce of reality left in these dystopian economic incentives. And while there have been extremely detailed discussions on America's impending oil crisis, largely driven by the lack of reserves, as well as the historic gap between the physical price of oil and its paper valuation, I wanted to break down why even in the absolute best case scenario, we would not see any true economic normalcy until at least 2027. If the Strait of Hormuz were to fully open today, most analysts estimate that it would take between 4 to 9 months for global oil supply to return to pre-crisis levels. However, this does not account for the Pentagon's warning that removing the thousands of naval mines deployed throughout the strait and surrounding waters could also take up to 6 months, even after a full ceasefire, severely limiting safe passage. This delay would also keep insurance costs elevated, as shipping firms remain reluctant to fully resume operations without clear.
So basically, we're all fucking screwed until end of 2027, pretty much. And it's these movements that a certain group of people is benefiting from, while the rest of us are being economically hurt by this. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. While a certain group of people, they can do insider trading, they got their assets going up, and they're safe and secure, and they're almost decoupled from this society.
Guarantees of safety, and as these constraints would keep prices elevated, it would continue pushing nitrogen fertilizer costs to remain roughly 30% above pre-war levels, with a recent survey of 5,700 farmers by the American Farm Bureau Federation finding that around 70% are already unable to afford all the fertilizer they need, and nearly 6 in 10 report worsening financial conditions due to rising input costs. And since fertilizer represents 30 to 40% of global grain production costs, this would drive sustained increases in the price of wheat, corn, rice, and other staples, with the full impact hitting global food markets over a 6 to 18-month lag, disproportionately affecting lower income households and developing economies, effectively proving that regardless of the market reverting to all-time highs due to blind optimism, continued AI hype, or simply just another opportunity for some quick profit before a severe pullback, the reality is that the true state of the economy has not been accurately represented for decades.
Yeah, because the market is, 1,000 people with so much money that they know what to do with. That's the market. And when they have enough money to make more money, it'll just go over and go over and go over and just get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's the market. That's not the reality. And it's two separate worlds at this point.
As the price of the Dow can never represent the millions of Americans who are struggling to make ends meet, where the abandonment of true economic representation and the growing irrelevance of the masses is further incentivized as it allows assets to be acquired at lower valuations, market power to expand even further, and wealth to remain increasingly concentrated at the top.
He's gotta stop. It's triggering me right now. Jeff Bezos laughing that hard is triggering me right now. He needs to stop using that, dude. I mean, it is having the intended effect, but at the same time, I just had to say something. I couldn't take it.
What I hope that we're beginning to recognize is that there is a catastrophically massive difference between the actual real-world economic reality that the majority of us are facing and the incentives for profit. When you have the top 10% of Americans making up about 50% of the consumer purchasing power, it's an industry's best incentive to serve the top 10%. In fact, it's in about everybody's best interest to serve the top 10%. So what happens when 50% goes to 55, goes to 60, goes to 65, goes to 70?
Which is happening.
We become more and more economically irrelevant by the day. And so what does that mean? We lose power. We lose our privacy. We lose our autonomy. When you have the bottom 50% of Americans already making up less than 1% of all corporate equities and mutual fund shares, do you think that we're going to benefit from rising productivity due to AI? No. Our economic reality is mass unemployment. And I'm here to tell you that as of right now, this version of, well, more jobs will be created, it's not real. If you look back since the 1980s, the majority of jobs created were in low-wage service roles. So what makes you think that all of a sudden these are going to be fantastic, amazing, life-changing, profitable roles? It's not going to happen.
It's just going to be more and more lower wage roles. And it's just going to be a competition of who can pay the lowest while still getting the same amount of value from the person working the job. What he's saying, it makes a lot of sense. And if you really think about it, this is already where it's heading. How can you stop a machine that this is this big and the course is set from years and years ago and it won't budge? How would you stop that? How would you stop a system that's been operating this way for so long and now it's just becoming more efficient and more optimized to operate this way? And there's less and less incentive to care about the regular people. I mean, the regular people are just going to be like ants. They're going to be like the peons. It's just a sad reality, man.
Okay, let's say it's going to create universal high income because these companies will be so profitable. There'll be so much money that they can afford to actually give back to the people.
That's not happening.
I'm here to tell you, there has not been a more profitable time in history than right now. Where's that profit? Like, the profit isn't coming to us. So all of a sudden, it's just going to be coming into our pockets? I'm sure if that is the case, there's a lot that we're going to have to give up for that. Again, it goes to the economic irrelevance. It goes to the incentives.
I don't see them giving like a UBI or something. I do see them providing dorms and your soy mixture for the day and your daily activities all planned out in order to best extract value from you. I do see that. It's the first episode of Black Mirror. Second episode of Black Mirror I think the first episode was when he fucked the pig. The second episode is the one where they live in these dorms and they just have to half the day they bike and cycle, the other half they just stare at screens, and it's just like the craziest reality, unless you get on that one show and become an influencer so that you can break away from that reality that everybody else is living.
That is why there hasn't been an economic collapse. You could argue certainly that 2008 was one, but the reality is that it's just been an economic decay. What we are heading to is the loss of the middle class and the haves and the have-nots. And what I've seen is every administration, every 4 years, it's a promise that things are going to get better. And what do I see is I see more economic struggles, more financial hardship. I get thousands of comments every single day. And hundreds of those are people saying that they don't want to be on Earth anymore. Right? They don't see the reason for continuing to go on to the next day. That's the economic reality that we're a part of. I get the opportunity to be able to speak with unique individuals that have the potential to make a difference, that have power, that have all of these things. My goodness, the amount of conversations that I'm actively having to chirp in and say, hey, we're supposed to be talking about the average person here.
Hey, bro, I don't. Maybe you need my fucking cup of coffee in the morning so that you can get your dose of pessimism. But I would give up on that for sure. Because if an individual is able to even make a change or make an impact, it's nullified to a point where it barely matters. And especially if you're trying to help the average person, you get negative naysayers coming out the woodworks and staunchly defend corporations and billionaires just amassing wealth in amounts never seen before in history. Is there going to be a redistribution of wealth? I don't think so. Is there going to be more and more issues coming from this economic decoupling? I think so. And at this point, you should just recognize where it's going and just kind of buckle up and try your best to be able to survive for a freaking long dark economic winter. Because unless Jesus Christ himself comes down, which I doubt it, unless he comes down and enact a miracle where everybody's nice to each other and can see that amassing wealth and mistreating each other and being distrustful and all that is bad. And if he's able to create a society where people actually like each other and trust each other and want to work for the benefit of each other, yeah, unless that miracle happens, I don't see it getting better at all.
What about everybody is being forgotten? We are not supposed to be catering to the very finite, small percentage of people that are already doing well. It's like I am losing my mind. I had a call today. I did the call. I had to get in bed immediately after because I was so distraught with how just not relevant it was for the average person. In many ways, like what we were actively talking about could make the average person's life better, but it doesn't feel like that's the fuel. The fuel has to be that. But it's like people are invisible. It's like the people that, go to a stoplight and you lock the car when you see a homeless person. People don't think of it as, I can't believe that was somebody's kid that is now at this stage in life. Or what has our country come to where this is what happens at every stoplight? We just lock the door and we don't make eye contact. That's the nation that we've become.
Hey man, you can't help every homeless person out there. There's so many of them. And this goes back to the distrust that I was talking about earlier. When it goes both ways, when you distrust the homeless person, and the homeless person may or may not have good intentions or not, why would you go out of your way to help them? And how can you be sure the help you're giving them is actually being used properly, right? I get where he's coming from. I see his point. Maybe that was a bad example that he gave, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? I personally don't see anything changing. And if the only change that's going to come is things getting worse if you're an average person. So my advice is to just find a way to buckle down and just hope that you can survive the craziness that's coming.
I don't know. I just am, and it makes me feel like I'm like, there's been something since I was a little kid that was almost hyper aware. And so all I have spent my life kind of seeing was like adult hardship is what it felt like. I think I was very aware of what my parents were going through. And then I just kept seeing it. And I would see it with the kids I was going to school with. And then I would get made fun of from like girls that I was interested in or things. And they'd always say, he's so quiet and he's weird and he doesn't talk. And it was because I was so focused on what can I do to help? And so, now I'm in the opportunity to do so. And I'm using my platform to call for community because that's what we've been tricked into thinking, is that we have to be at each other's throats. We destroyed the nuclear family. One of the reasons why there is no incentive for them to make a better tomorrow is because, well, we're fighting amongst ourselves. We haven't stood up to them. And when I call for community, it's like, no, I'm not interested in that. I'd rather have an app or a petition or something that I can sign, something that actually works. And it's like, man, we're missing the mark here.
Well, I don't know what you mean by calling for community. I guess your point is kind of vague, right? Your call to action is kind of vague. And I get where he's coming from. He sounds very passionate, and the energy coming from him is honest, right? It's honest, distraught energy. But I think he needs a dose of cynicism just to make it real. He needs to be grounded a little bit and just understand that nothing's gonna happen. Nothing like that is gonna happen unless society fundamentally changes from the way it is right now. Unless you magically flip a switch and everybody's moral code changes, and this is a uniquely American issue where Americans don't trust Americans, but overall in the world, if you flip a switch and regular people don't take advantage of other regular people and don't try to scheme and scam and try to run any sort of get rich quick schemes on people and just steal their money and all that. Until you can do that, nothing's gonna change, because those actions gets used by the powerful people to pit us against each other, right? But there's no denying that those actions happen, and people are incentivized to be bad people in order to profit from this society. So I guess my point is, you need to fundamentally change people from within based on who they are. And until you get to do that, you're not gonna get any progress this way. You gotta get people that want to help, and they'll join your community or whatever. But you're not gonna get the majority of people, and you're not gonna have them sit down and listen to you and understand your passion and all that. I get it, I feel it, I see it. But do I think the average person is gonna get it and see it?
We are fooling ourselves if we think that there is something bigger than community. And what does that mean? Do you know your neighbor's name? When was the last time that you went out in the area that you live and you picked up the immense amount of trash that is all over the ground?
Hey,
Because you're investing in your community.
my area is pretty clean.
When was the last time that you did something? You know, I had my neighbor, and she's an older lady.
Why is he throwing
and
shade?
I think that she doesn't like to be seen or something. I don't really know, but I try to help out in little ways that I can. And so we've had a lot of storms recently, and her recycling bin kept flying out into the nebula. And so what I would do is I would hear it fly down the stairs. I would go out in the rain, and I would bring it back up for her. I didn't do that because I wanted to thank you. I did it because it was the right thing to do. I don't want to have an older lady going down the stairs in the rain to get a recycling bin. Those are the things that create community, because somebody else might have seen that and decided, you know what, I'm going to put my best foot forward and do something. What conversations are you having at the dinner table? When was the last time you even had dinner with somebody? When was the last time you actually had a conversation with your parents that wasn't blaming them or you getting blamed for whatever hardship is in the area? Right? We're failing on so many fronts. And certainly it's because of economic hardship in many ways. But man, there isn't a price on a good conversation.
What is he talking about?
There isn't a price for doing the right thing.
I think he lost the plot at the end. This is the tail end of the video. He needed to end on a stronger thesis, in my opinion. Because brother, in a world where there's fucking guns and shit, a good conversation ain't gonna do you no good, bro. In a world where people be scheming and scamming and plotting against you for years and years and years, and they have all these fucking big plans going on, and these machinations behind the scenes that are working against you and are designed to hold you down, and only with time and money and technology and AI, it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse. Well, bro, how does a good conversation even help? Now, if you're new to the channel, this is the first video you seeing from me. It's I am a pessimist, and I am a negative Nancy, and I definitely lean towards nihilism in a way, right? But at the same time, why not? You know, isn't that just the way things going? Shouldn't you be just looking out for yourself at this point? Right? What would a good conversation or being good with your neighbors gonna do to you? Yeah, you're gonna build a better community. You're gonna build a slightly better relationship with your neighbors. Yeah, I get it. But how's that gonna help the bigger economic shift that's happening right now at such a rate where even if everybody watching this video started doing what he says and the effects multiplied over time, it still wouldn't be enough to change anything. And hey, man, he's free to express how he feels and give his opinion and give solutions and all that, but I do think that it's a little too late for any of this to even change anything. And we're kind of stuck in a world that's already been decided for us.
You just do it. And so it's multifaceted. There's so many different things that are going wrong, but what can you do in your life right now? It's do your best, and it's trying to make a better impact in your life, and hopefully in the service of others. And I don't know. That's about all I have to say. If this was able to provide some value to you, I would greatly appreciate it. If you like the video, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. I'm trying to do the best that I can, and so I hope that you want to be a part.
Hey man, Don't be sad now, Damon. Come on, brother. Come on, man. It is what it is, bro. You need to calm down. That's number one. Number two, your call to action is gonna be a little bit more solid, so that I can get behind it. Right? It can't be too vague or too wishy-washy or too feel good. I mean, you're passionate. I'll give you that, and you're on the right track. It's just that what you're asking people to do is so far removed from bringing actual change that you'll be better off just asking them to do something directly and find a cause that you can attach yourself to and all that. Because just by go form a community, how's that gonna help the regular person watching this? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I'm a negative Nancy and all that, so don't let my pessimistic attitude bring you down. And Damon said it already. Please like, please subscribe, comment below. Let me know what you want me to talk about next. And until next time, radio out.